great to see you all today. You know, as happens at every single university, there's always technical problems, and it's great to see it's happening here because it makes me feel better about UniSA. So if you come to my university, the same thing's going to happen. So just to sort of talk to you about what we're going to do today and why we're here. As Kay mentioned, I've been researching academic integrity actually for 16 years now. I first started looking at it as part of my doctoral thesis in 2002. I established the International Journal for Educational Integrity in 2005. We ran the first conference, went out to number 8. The first one was in 2003. In 2016, we published a handbook of academic integrity. It's had over 120,000 downloads and is the highest performing education book published by Springer, which tells you that people do care about this issue. So when you're talking to your colleagues and your senior managers and they're like, oh, you know, that's something small over here. Well, actually the whole world cares about this. So I hope that I'm going to inspire you to care about it as well. I'm sure you do, that's why you're here. This is my 4th OLT project, the 3rd on academic integrity. And this one was the very last bit of money that the OLT had before they were sent down the drain. So very, very sad. The OLT have been a great funder of this research, so I've got to acknowledge them. So today's agenda, you have on your pack, the top page, you can see what we're going to do. Look at this, we're already on time. I'm about to start the presentation. So I'm going to spend the first 45 minutes sharing with you some key findings. The purpose of today, though, isn't so that I can just, again, tell you the findings, especially for those who've heard it before. The purpose of today is for me to give a quick introduction to those crystallised, distilled key findings, and then for us to work together. So it's a workshop, it really is, it's not just a lecture. That's why you're in groups, that's why you've got stuff, you've got paper, you've got pens. We've started working on the resources. So what we really wanted to do was develop evidence-based resources. Easier said than done. It's actually sort of easier to collect data, analyse it, publish it, and I have to say our 2 first papers were published last night in Studies in Higher Ed, which are the findings I'm sharing with you today from the student and staff surveys. And we've got much more to publish, many more papers. We've got another year to go still. But then the challenge is saying, well, what does that mean? And how can we help our colleagues who are in the trenches every day trying to address this issue? What are some meaningful resources to develop? We have a website. Many of you have probably already registered. If you haven't already, please do. The website address is at the top here of the infographics. There are 2 infographics in your pack. Those folk over there who can't see the screen, you'll actually see that the infographics have most of the information that I'm going to be sharing on the PowerPoints. Now those of you who were at the symposium last year, this first one which looks a bit more red, we tried to make the colours a bit different. That was last year's infographic, and you'll see it's very descriptive. This is one we just published a couple of weeks ago, which really tries to crystallise our findings more. There's additional findings, but it's also, I think, more nuanced. Now, both of those infographics are critical. You can register on the website, the address is there. As we develop resources, then you can access them and get them. And as I say, those 2 papers are available as of last night on Studies in Higher Ed. So if you'd like to see the full findings, please do that. So that's the plan. Me telling you the big stuff, for those who haven't heard it before. Then we're going to talk about one of our key findings, which is that contract cheating is a symptom rather than the problem. It's a symptom of a whole range of systemic issues. We'll have a little break, and then we're going to divide into 5 groups, and I'm going to give each table a particular resource with an associated activity, and I'm going to get you to sit and look at that, and you can see there are questions on your agenda. I'll be wanting you to think about what are the strengths and weaknesses of the resource. Would it be useful for you? How could you use it? Is it too wordy? I need to acknowledge my project co-leader, Rowena Harper from UniSA. She is the most amazing colleague, hope that's on tape, a brilliant collaborator, and she's been great to work with, so we're co-leading this project. But we're not alone. So the project's been led from the University of South Australia, but as you can see here, we've got, oh, that doesn't work on that screen either. Nothing works today. We've got partner institutions at Griffith University, another leading university on academic integrity, the University of New South Wales, Sydney, and Swansea in the UK. Many of you might know Phil Newton's work. He's done a fair bit of work on contract cheating as well, so we're lucky to have him. As I mentioned, our brilliant data analyst, Michael Burton at UWA, and some of you would have been liaising with Sonia Siddiqui, who's our project manager and has been organising all these events for us. She's actually based in Sydney, but works with us at UniSA. She's that brilliant. We're happy to work across boundaries just to keep her. So just a little bit of background to remind you about how this project came about. You probably all remember Not the visitors from China who weren't here for that, but those who have been around for the last couple of years, you'll remember there were lots and lots of scandals in 2015 to 17. The very first thing, the really thing that got the media's attention was the My Master scandal. Hands up if you know that scandal. Some of you don't. Okay, in brief, the Fairfax media exposed a large number of students who were using a commercial cheat site, an online essay writing service, bespoke essay writing service, and they had been doing that for some time, paying this service to do their work. And the Fairfax media exposed it. And I remember at the time, Julie Hare from The Australian called me, and she was like, Tracey, oh wow, isn't this amazing? You know, the people are paying for their essays. And I was like, you speak to anybody on my corridor or anybody on any campus, we know this has been happening. No news to us. But what's amazing about that is when it gets on the front page of the paper, suddenly people start to care. So that was a brilliant catalyst for change, the My Master scandal. Things we all knew had been happening, now it was out there in the public arena. But it didn't stop with just people buying assignments. Then at the same year, there was a big scandal around fake testaments, parchments, where people, again, the media exposed it, students had been using an online service which had hacked into universities, and they were able to replicate perfectly Australian universities' parchments, right down to the watermark or the seal, the signature, the paper, everything. Now that was a shock. We had the ICAC investigation into corruption in higher education. Essentially, that report was really looking at some of the corruption and recruitment practices around internationalisation that was really quite scandalous, around recruitment agents that weren't appropriately qualified, were taking students that didn't have appropriate IELTS or appropriate prerequisites, and were basically grabbing students for the fees that they would earn, as you can imagine. Again, everyone in this room knows that that's been happening, but ICAC exposed it, wrote a report on it, and people started to take notice. As a result of some of those scandals, our national regulator, TEXA, the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, sent a letter to every university saying, tell us what you're doing about these things. What are you doing about things like the My Master scandal and the fake testaments? And every university had to put together a response to TEXA and say what they were doing. So TEXA starts to notice now, oh geez, I love a good scandal, I really do. But it just went on and on. Now, has anybody not seen the SBS Pens for Hire documentary? Hands up if you have not seen that. I cannot recommend that highly enough. 2015, I believe it was still, or 16, around there. You can go online, it's still there via SBS. It's not a long documentary, 20, 30 minutes. That documentary exposed, in particular, but not only, international students who were struggling with their language and struggling with the requirements of an Australian university, and how they were forced to, because they really couldn't do it any other way, forced to use contract cheating sites like My Master, but also exam impersonators. Now this was really shocking, and they interviewed students, incognito, and heard from engineers and nurses and people in really important professions saying how they had cheated their way through. One student that I think really got to Rowena and I particularly, we watch this documentary often to remind us what we're all about. There was one student who said, listen, I believe he came from China, I came to Australia with every good intention of studying. I wanted to change my life, my family was sacrificing for me. But in the first semester, I failed every single assessment. Every single course I was enrolled in, I failed. And nobody called me. I didn't get an email. I didn't get a telephone call. Nobody noticed or cared. Rowena and I watched that and go, yeah. So nobody cared. And what he did then, he thought, well, I'm going to see how I go if I get somebody else to do it. I'll focus on earning some money so I can pay for that. And he did that. Nobody noticed or cared either. Nobody noticed that he'd failed everything with very poor marks in the first semester. And nobody noticed that now suddenly his work had radically improved. But he did get through and he passed and he graduated. And these things are the things, again, that many of us have worried about and been concerned about, but here it was out in the public arena. So that's an amazing documentary to watch. Around the same time, in 2016, you might remember, lots of exposure of fraudulent recruitment practices in the vet sector. Not if you remember that. Yeah? So things like really distressing things, recruitment agents going out into disadvantaged backgrounds, such as the AP Winelands in South Australia, offering alcohol, marijuana, laptops, iPads to enroll in a course that they would never, ever take. And so that resulted in lots and lots of ghost students who are in name, they had a name, they had an ID, but they never took a single class, they never turned up to a single, Skype call or online discussion or anything. So that was really huge in the vet sector, and I have to say Simon Birmingham's really addressed that and made big inroads there. And that largely occurred, as you know, because of the way the fee system was set up, so that students could enrol in the universities or the college would get the funds, regardless of whether the student graduated or even turned up. People were worried around this time around low admission standards, as we have done forever. And then even a year ago, there was another scandal around Airtasker. Now, Airtasker is an outsourcing service. If you want someone to walk your dog or do the laundry or pick up your dry cleaning or get your pizza, you can call them up or go online and they'll do it for you for a reasonable fee. But somebody who was working on Airtasker actually blew the whistle to Texas and said, listen, I'm a graduate of university. I'm really disheartened and upset by the fact that lots of students are using Airtasker to pay people to do their assignments. So again, back we go to Texas, who says, well, what's happening here? So they'd done a couple of reports by then and now they're still investigating it. So the only thing I'll say about this timeline is that I'm pretty disappointed that we've had no scandals for about a year. I'm disappointed because, suddenly people are not so interested or caring about it. We've been doing the research, we've been doing our roadshows, going around and sharing all our findings, and it's sort of like you can see people going, tick, tick, we've covered that, we got that job done. Texas released their good practice note in September, October last year, providing advice around what to do to address contract cheating. So it's sort of like, oh yeah, we've fixed that problem, all good, let's move on to the next thing. So we do need another scandal or something happening, yes?
Because if we've got students cheating and getting through and getting their degree and then getting a job, but we follow through and find out whether the degree was relevant at all because they're performing okay in their job.
How do we know if they're not?
We don't. That's
we
what
don't.
I'm saying.
Yeah, it'd be a great research project.
We need a longitudinal study to find out whether the educational intervention was relevant or not.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty hard to find people willing to talk confidentially about that, though.
They
But yeah, no, it's a really important
could
thing.
be different voices and in the shadows, but
Yeah, one project that Rowena and I are actually put into for an ARC discovery is, I'll share this a little bit now while we're waiting for the screen. We discovered an overrepresentation of cheating behaviour in engineering. So you can see the red infographic, we'll show you that. We also discovered it wasn't just engineering, there's a whole range of factors that sort of bring it all together in engineering. But one thing we think we've found, we need to explore it further, is that there are gendered cheating behaviours in engineering. So this will all make sense in a second, but women tend to share their assignments with others, and men, sorry guys, that's only what we just think at the moment based on the data that we have. We need to explore more. Men tend to take the assignments and submit them as their own. So the women think they're being altruistic, and the men are like, thank you very much. And we want to explore that, and exactly as you just suggested, by going out to the profession, to engineering, and finding out how does that impact on people's professional practice, what they can do, and so on. It looks like it's promising. Hey, the big screen's coming up. Well, I'll proceed. You have the infographics in front of you, so we can always come back in a second. So, just so that we're all on the same page, it's going to happen. I have faith. When contract cheating was first coined as a term in 2006 by Lancaster and Clark in the UK, they very much were thinking about people paying for their assignments, going to a commercial provider, going online. Technology is so crazy in this room. So paying for their assignments, and that's the term, you created a contract with somebody who would then do the work for you and you pay them. So that was the traditional understanding of the term. Now we've taken a broader understanding of the term, and so has the literature in that 12-year period. So our definition of contract cheating, it occurs when a student submits work, so not just when they go online to find it. They have to submit the work. Submits work that's been completed for them by a third party. Some people call this third party cheating as well. Irrespective of the third party's relationship with the student and whether they're paid or unpaid. Now this definition becomes very important as I share the findings from our project with you. So it's not just about students outsourcing it and buying it from a commercial provider, it's about whether they go to anyone else and ask them to write it for them. Why does that matter? Because they're not doing the learning. As you say, if they go into professional practice, whether they paid for that assignment or whether they just got their mum to do it, or their brother or their friend, either way they haven't completed the learning, they haven't achieved the learning outcomes. So that third party can be pretty much anyone. What we found is it's friends, former students, family members. So looking at your infographic, let's do that. Let's use hard copy. Let's go back old school. We'll pretend we're in the 80s. At the top you can see this is how we conceptualized the 7 outsourcing behaviours that we were interested in exploring. So you can see we've created a spectrum. Now we're not suggesting we've covered everything here, but they're the 7 main types. And what we were interested in looking at is some of these might be called sharing. If you buy, sell or trade notes, is that cheating? We said no. I'll share some findings which challenge that a little bit. Our hypothesis was that there's a slippery slope from buying and selling and trading notes through to actually outsourcing your work. We had this idea that if you're prepared to outsource your note-taking even, you don't have the ability then to do the assignment. But we're not calling that cheating, we're saying that's sharing. And the second behaviour in orange there, this is one of the more fun experiences I've had. The second sharing behaviour there is providing an assignment to somebody else for any reason. Now, we know that some students, when they provide an assignment to someone else, they are actually facilitating, enabling cheating. But we also know that students are genuinely altruistic. They did that assignment last semester, they're like, hey, I got an HD, do you want to have a look? Hey, the topic hasn't changed. Here, have a look and see how the structure goes. And we, as educators, think it's a good idea, do we not, to provide a model to students. So we do that, we provide assignments to students for any reason. When Rowena and I were putting together this application to the ARC recently, because we've never done an ARC before, we were like, somebody show us a successful example, give me a model. Is that because we wanted to cheat? No. Did it make it tempting to use their structure? Yeah, it did. So, but now we know that there's a sort of a little gradation between those 2 sharing behaviours and the cheating behaviours. But we're saying those next 5 are definitely cheating. For sure we're saying they're cheating. And those are when you obtain an assignment and you obtain it with the intention of submitting it, you go get it from someone. If you provide or receive exam assistance, or if you take an exam for somebody else or they take it for you, exam impersonation. Now we reckon that's pretty clearly cheating, would you agree? The others might be cheating. We're not saying they are.
Sorry,
yes?
What does receive or provide exam assistance mean?
Oh well, it's so broad as well,
So
exactly.
I would consider that cheating.
Ooh.
If it's just getting someone to help you study for an exam.
No, it's probably more like an
Oh
online.
no, we actually did classify it. We did classify it in the survey. It was like during an invigilated exam,
right.
did you provide or receive assistance in any way? And we listed all these ways. It might be through notes, it might be through, so we talked about an invigilated situation. But you're right, not preparation. That's different. So they're the 7 outsourcing behaviours that we were investigating. So,
I'd suggest that
yeah.
the first 2 is a bit like marijuana, they're gateway activities.
The gateway activities. Well, that was our hypothesis, and in fact the data has supported that hypothesis, which I'll share with you in a moment. One thing is that people had, there was, because of all those scandals in 2015 to 17, there really was a sense of hysteria. Now I say I want a good scandal, I do, because that precipitates action, but we don't want to be hysterical about it and think that all of our students are doing this, because they are not. But we didn't have any data. We didn't actually have any hard data. There were a few different studies done in the UK, very small studies, like around 50, 90 students, asking them if they would or were they willing to buy. So we wanted to collect hard data on this. So our first research question was, how prevalent is it? Is it, is the sky falling in, or is this something we need to worry about or not? We wanted to know what students and staff thought about it, their attitudes towards contract cheating and their experiences. We actually wanted to know if staff had ever engaged in it as well. We wanted to know all the individual and contextual and institutional factors that might impact on a student's decision to outsource their work. Keeping in mind the topic that the OLT had funded us for, they were asking us, is authentic assessment the answer to this problem? So we were trying to explore that. So we wanted to ask what kinds of assessments are associated with contract cheating, and can authentic assessment relevant, real life, based on professional practice, and we have some criteria for that, which we used based on the literature. But can authentic assessment solve the problem of contract cheating? Our hypothesis was that it could not, that it was useful, but it would not solve it, and our data has borne that out, so I'll share that with you. So, how I wish you could see the screens, but you can still look at the infographic at the top here, which tells you a little bit about this. So we ran parallel staff and student surveys at 12 institutions around Australia, 8 universities, 4 new HEPs. I'm not going to be sharing the new HEP data with you today because what we found is it's quite a distinctly different cohort. So the data I'm sharing with you today is the 8 universities, and that was 14,086 responses just from the universities, and we had 1,147 responses from staff. Really good numbers. We also had a lot of qualitative data, which we have just started to analyse. Watch this space for more publishing on that, but we're in the process of analysing 925 qualitative responses from students and 325 from staff. We also have a huge data set of procurement requests. So a procurement request is where students go online and say, I've got this assignment, it's 3,000 words, it's due next week, who can do it for me? So a procurement request, we had 111,000 of them that we had harvested. We could not analyse those. We just randomly selected 200 of those to assess against the criteria we used on authenticity. We also had 2 universities very bravely and anonymously, obviously confidentially, offered us their breach data over a period of 2 or 3 years. I'm pretty sure it was 3 years. 15 to 17, 3 years. So we had 2 different universities. The actual information they had where they had substantiated a case of contract cheating. And we could then again assess those breach reports against authentic assessment. So we've got a lot of different data, really a lot of data. So our 8 key findings. Now we might switch to the lighter coloured infographic. Might be useful for you to have a look at. Actually, not just yet. Sorry, not just yet. What you might want to do is have a look at the first resource which we're going to look at, this one here, which says contract cheating is a symptom, not the problem. That's pretty much what I'm going to talk to you about just for a second and then go on to the big findings. So, a third of all staff, this is our first big finding. We had always started this presentation by saying contract cheating is happening in this perfect storm. All these things have happened to create this perfect environment for students outsourcing their work. And our qualitative data really supports that. A third of the staff described contract cheating as a systemic problem, created or made worse by government and institutional policy and practice. So here's a quote from one staff member about that. They said, "The upsurge in third-party cheating is due to students' perception of university degrees as a commercial transaction due to university management's focus on the business of education, such that marketing of university products," they said in inverted commas, "becomes more important than the education process itself." Would we say hear to that? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another person said, "While it's theoretically possible to design assessment that minimises the opportunity for cheating, there's not enough time allocated to assessment and not enough time allocated to student-staff contact in order to implement this effectively."